we wanted to pose this more as a kind of an opening discussion with you. And I know you probably have kind of some, history you want to give for everybody on the program, kind of what you're doing now, and then also what you plan on doing. And also, I would love to know how other cities can help you maybe in your efforts, and then also how the network can provide you with different types of support. So, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as Victoria goes along, because she's certainly welcome to address those as she talks about her program. So with that, the floor is yours, Victoria.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm super happy to be talking with you today. So I figured to kind of get us started, some of you guys have been in the sustainability realm and probably are familiar with Peoria's a history of sustainability, and some may not be. I myself had to kind of learn when I got into this role what the history was. And so Peoria actually was probably one of the early adapters into sustainability. I believe our first sustainability plan and that process started in 2007. So kind of at the onset of when we started to see those things more commonly popping up in municipalities. And the role was in a different spot, and I think had different ideas. I think early on it might have been tied into economic development. And so we started off early. Peoria had a great sustainability plan. Early on, we had a form of what I call now the green team. But sustainability was kind of a different beast back then. And it seems like historically we tackled things on kind of like a project basis. So it was these project sustainability items rather than maybe kind of a whole arching. And it came from one department kind of tasking out and doing these projects, but there really wasn't that internal and ground floor movement to really get those going. And so it worked. It was just very much, I think, isolated into the different projects. And so we have a strong commitment to LEED buildings here in Peoria. So it was one of our big kind of early projects was all new municipal buildings need to be LEED gold or LEED silver, if not higher. And so we are doing some great things, and some of those project-based items are continuing forward to this day. But we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how it's shifted recently. And so we've been doing great things for a long time. A lot of our departments are fantastic and are, leading the way within their own areas. And so I think really the city saw that and thought, how can we merge this all together? So how can there be kind of more centralized and less siloed, I guess, approach to sustainability? And so I started in early 2020. So back in 2019, there was a shift. And so they moved sustainability actually into water services. So that's why my title is a little bit different. It is sustainability and water conservation. So I'm the coordinator for both of those programs. And so the reason why they merged that is if you think about it in Arizona, if you don't have water, it doesn't matter what other great sustainable items you have, the city itself is going to struggle. And so those things merge together so uniquely. And as mandated by the state and as part of all conservation programs, we have to be doing education outreach. And so when those things were combined together, we were able to combine and kind of tap into the resources and the outreach that conservation was already doing and be able to kind of relabel and work sustainability into that. And so that's why we have our sustainable university classes, which has a big focus on water, of course, because it's also tied into our requirements with water conservation and some of the fantastic classes that we have there. It's interesting enough, though, when you think about sustainability in Arizona, really one of the first things you probably do think about is water. And so our residents are uniquely tied to that. And when you think about having, a sustainable community and resiliency, usually water's on the top of that list as well. So a nice merging between that. The difference and maybe even one of the struggles is you think about financing options. So depending on how cities and municipalities are set up sustainability wise, if it's coming from up top, depending on financing, are there funds that can be applied to other departments for these bigger citywide projects that go forth? And so the difference now that we're in a department is that we can't fund items into other departments. So really it's changed how we think about sustainability as a really as a coordinator, it's working within the different departments to really identify projects and figure out how that works within the current structure and the current finances that are going on. So we're not getting kind of that top-down finance and you have to do a project. We're really trying to work it within the budgets and the current financing plan of the different areas and departments. So we have a new green team. And so before there was a green team and they were utilized, but it really wasn't, they weren't like the basis of all the sustainability kind of moving forward and the push within the city. And so that's where we've kind of changed this. So Anne had mentioned that we're kind of doing a sustainability plan 2.0, and really it's 2.0 in how we're tackling sustainability period on a citywide scale is we're really utilizing our experts across all of our different departments, and they are really the basis for the movement in their areas. Me being sustainable and a water person, but I'm certainly not an expert in recycling and the different challenges you have to have there, or in engineering and the planning development and certain challenges there. So really utilizing the expertise that are already there to help inform great decisions going forward, and their unique knowledge of how the department works and how interaction with the community goes within their realm. And so it's really been important for us to get that green team back together and really empower them to be the speakers and to be the driving force within their areas of sustainability. When we are doing this new plan, so we had an old plan. If you guys have ever researched this, so this lovely thing, it's a great start, but it is very text heavy. And when you first open it, so if you're a regular resident, you're going to open up these plans and initially just going to like fade right out. Text heavy, there's not snippets you can drag from it. And so we're really trying to change the shift of our plan that we're creating to be very visual and to be able to give these snapshots of where we're at and where we're going in a way that is very tangible. And that's not just for external, but even internally. When we have if you think about trying to inform your management and your internal staff about the progress and things going forward, it can be hard to, if you don't have anything visual that kind of shows your progress and how you're doing, it's really hard to continue to talk that talk and walk that walk within your own groups and your folks as well. So we're excited to kind of shift how we even visualize, I think, sustainability in the city as well. One of the new things that we've done when I got started is we have created a greenhouse gas inventory. So something almost similar, but it wasn't called this, was done previously early on. And so I was able to take what was started before and then rehash that and then add in a few years. So we kind of have a good understanding greenhouse gas wise, but really if you take out the greenhouse gas, it's really your energy consumption, where you were at, where you're at now, and then what that trajectory looks in the future. So we have that to kind of use and to work into our plan to just give us a better trajectory. And again, you can't really plan for the future when we don't really know your past and where you're at now. So just that better understanding. And again, going back to data, having that data source to look at to help drive items moving forward. Did I see a question pop up on the chat?
I think Ryan had more of a comment. He said you want to measure what matters. And I'm sure we can think of a metric that has missed the mark for the goal of sustainability.
Yes. Very true. Yes. And trying to shift from maybe our original form of sustainability forward to this data intensive one, or being able to track it. It's something that should be easy and you can think of, but it is not. Once you dive into the weeds and you try and go through all the data that the different areas and departments has, and you're trying to comb through that to come with the metric, it is shockingly complex, even though it's a relatively simple idea. And so once this exercise gets completed, it really does set the stage for so much better understanding and movement and being able to show those successes. And really that's what we want to do in sustainability, right? Is to show our successes, show our community and our management that, these wonderful things that we've been doing, like they do have an impact, and hope that inspires more funding and more excitement to do more of these things in the future. Let's see. So and mention also that we partnered with ASU. So Peoria has been partnering with ASU Sustainable Cities Network for a long time. And it's really been a great, what's the word, kind of shifting forward. So these folks were able to, we had a class that was able to look at our sustainability plan and do some research to kind of see how it fits along with others and what are some potential metrics going forward that would fit within the plan. So sometimes it's just nice as a city when we have that third party viewpoint on things that you're doing and what maybe that forward momentum looks like. The city doing it is great and fine and dandy, but sometimes it's nice to have those third party because it's not just a city telling our residents and our, that we need to do this, this, and this. It's beyond that, right? It's not just internally, it's externally. We're having that review, we're having that third party be able to have their voice shown, and we're taking all of that into consideration. And so that's been a really great partnership with ASU being able to help us do that. We had a recent class this last semester that actually it was a kind of a year-long class that helps me do a lot of our community outreach, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a moment. So that was really integral to have ASU kind of helped co-host our town hall. So again, it's not just the city getting this, it's the students and then a whole nother voice that's in this picture, which was very helpful. I mentioned metrics based. So trying to track everything that we can. And as I like to tell people all the time, and this is being from my science background, is if it's not successful, that's okay. We want to see the data that shows that. We want to understand why. And if it's not, then we need to say that it's not, and how do we change this to be successful in the future? Or maybe there are things that need to drop off. It's kind of like a hypothesis. If your hypothesis is wrong, it's still a valid scientific answer, right? A no is still an answer, something more than we knew before. And so when we're moving forward with these sustainability actions and items, we have to keep that in mind as well. So we can't be afraid to show data to show if things are doing well or not. Like, we need to track it. And if it's not doing well, maybe that means it needs some support. Maybe if there's the community is really engaged in this, but it's not doing well, maybe that's a really good story and a really good ask for management going forward, is like, hey, we're struggling here. Maybe this is why we need some extra support, so that we can share that story along with our successes. That there's always two sides to every coin. And so we want to be able to show that when it comes to sustainability in Peoria. And then I mentioned our green team, right? This is meant to be a collaboration, a coordination between all of our fantastic departments. We've got amazing folks in our parks with our open space, and we've got our community wellness group. We've got fantastic resources and their knowledge of their areas. And so the hope is that it's not the ownership of sustainability then becomes citywide. It's not just here in this office in sustainability. It's everyone having their say and kind of owning their part and moving this whole idea and plan forward. So any questions before I jump into our current plan that we are creating in that process?
Victoria, I have a question with regards to your green team. How does your green team differ now from the way it was before? And do you have any recommendations, I guess, for other communities as they put together green teams? As far as being effective and having that voice. I know it looks like Harry had a question in the chat as far as, are all departments aligned with the sustainability goals? Making sure we get them all on board. What would you suggest?
Sure. So our green team from before, so there's a bit of a gap. The person that was in the sustainability spot was gone for a while before I started. And when they transitioned it from that original place to water, we lost a whole lot. And so there was a team before, but I think it was a smaller, I think it was higher up. It wasn't necessarily the folks that are in the trenches, I think, doing a lot of this. And I think it was a smaller. So I don't know that it encompassed all the different departments that we do now. How we figured out our team now is we really went through, and I had some sustainability plan experience in the past. So kind of taking what I had known from there, but also looking at really the main hub. So of course we want solid waste. Water is kind of in my hub as well. So I get to run 2 roles on that, as well as utilize some expertise from our other department staff. Planning, that's one that really definitely has to be in the mix. We've tried to get economic development in a little bit. Every municipality is going to have very unique staffing challenges when it comes to this. It's like if the department's already really understaffed or struggling, it's really hard to get someone that's going to be consistently able to kind of join in that conversation. So we tap in where we can, but we have 10 different departments that are part of the team. Some are going to be more active than others. Internally, we have a group that's our facilities, as well as part of the planning and designing of our own municipal buildings as well, so that we can hunt down internally our own data, but also get some information about the development side and the engineering that we're requiring right on the community scale. So the kind of a bunch of that. I'm trying to think of what other ones are on there that might be a little bit unique. Our neighborhood services group. So they are a part, this is a part that was not part of sustainability typically before, that we have brought into this. So they're kind of the owners of our community health and wellness section of our new plan. So we're really tying in the services that the city provides, the resources, about community health in general. What is that? How can we look to that and grow that sustainably more in the future? As to the question, let's see.
There's one from Ryan with regards to organizational struggles with Bravely, transparent for showing failure. So yeah, it sounds good. Yes. But yeah, to have that philosophy, any recommendations?
So I'm talking the talk and walking the walk right now, but when it comes to when the plan's adopted and moving forward, are we probably going to hit some roadblocks about talking about it as honestly as I do on an everyday basis? Potentially, yes. So the hope is that if I can not be afraid to bring it up and to talk about it and to, have that spin, that hopefully it's not shown in a bad light that it might have it in the past. And so that's kind of my plan going forward. Sometimes what does it ask for? Forgiveness after the fact. So I can't just run until I get told to stop and pause. But I think that you're right. That's a hurdle that everyone faces organizationally. And it's something, again, if you go back to the science, like we need to not be afraid of those no's or of those struggles, because if we're hiding those and we're hiding half of the learning curve, that's going to be really important going forward. Metrics. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to, before we moved on from the green team, I just wanted to ask, because we've really struggled with how to do that in our organization, right? Like how much time do you ask from people, whatever. Yes. Just while you were still on there, how often do y'all meet as a green team?
So let me tell you, green teaming in the COVID world.
Yeah.
I started and a month later, COVID hit and we were sent home. So I've actually never met my green team all in person in a room. It's always been virtual. They are fantastic. We're so lucky to have the passion that we have in our staff here in Peoria. And it's been a tremendous tool that we can use. So initially I was doing green team meetings maybe once every couple of months. So there's it depends on what's going on. I try not to have more than like one meeting a month, but there are going to be times like within this plan process that we've got a contractor that's helping us with some of our final plans. So we're maybe meeting a little bit more frequently, but anytime you're dealing with the amount of departments and people that we are and the different busyness levels, it's like herding cats. Yeah. There's really no other, it's just like herding cats, as we all have different priorities and different things drop off. And so it's really just about, you have these meetings, you get everyone involved, but it's about following up with people. And I pick up the phone call and just ring people. I'm like, hey, I caught you, like, let's just have a quick little conversation and let me know what's going on. Sometimes it's individual meetings with these folks. If they don't have time to like read through it or really don't understand that, I will just meet with them one-on-one and we'll go through whatever the ask is together so that I can then take that initiative. Sometimes it kind of falls on me to write that up or to come up with that answer after I've had that conversation with them. And then I just vet it again through them to make sure that I'm on the right path, that I'm catching what they were wanting to kind of share through that process. So there's never kind of an easy way around it. It really helps when they have director approval and you have, so our city manager got into our first green team meeting and supplied his support for what's going on and that this is a priority. And then our director meets with the other directors and mentions things. So the fact that we're trying to organize it from more of the ground floor and the boots on the ground, so to speak, but we're still getting that approval and that knowledge that there's time that's needed and effort in sustainability projects, and that the directors and that the city management are aware of that and supportive. So that kind of helps to merge it. But no matter what, there's going to be an ebb and I think flow to the ability to get these folks on. But really it's just consistency and understanding that just as we get absolutely bamboozled and busy, they are as well in their different departments. And some departments have a lot more deadlines. Think about planning and review. They have to review and turn things around within like 4 or 5 business days. And so if they get a big workload due to their deadlines, like they may not be able to get to something that you're asking of them. So just kind of working within individual groups to figure out that need, and then stepping into support and help on where you can to kind of get that next step that you need from the group. Hopefully that answered the question well enough.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say that was great explanation. Eric had a question on how do you decide on the metrics you use for your plan? So.
Yes. So really you always have to look at what data do you have? What data can you get? Because there's no point of trying to find this metrics that might be great. And it might be something that's used in a different part of the country really successfully. But if that's not data that you are collecting and that you have, you're setting yourself up for failure, really, because especially if you're asking for this data collection to happen from another department that's already really busy. So you really have to look at what you have, what data they're collecting, and then you have to kind of see what makes sense within that division, within that area. So we had gone through this process where we had created draft goals and metrics before we even brought a consultant on to kind of help us tighten it up. And so when she was able to get on board, she was able to then take a deeper look at that data to really hone in on a metric. But it really boils down to you have to know what you have. And that's the hardest, really the hardest part, is figuring out what data is available. And then understanding there's so many different things you can do with that data, and then understanding in a very simplistic form, right? We're not trying to overcomplicate this. This is going to go out to our community, right? And to our leaders, our management. It needs to be a nice snapshot, I guess, of that area. And so how do we take that and simplify it enough to where we're getting a meaningful data point that allows us to track and to be able to show some progress one way or another. And so it's definitely a process, but I guess my answer there is just you got to figure out what you have now, and then what that looks like in the future. We've got some groups that are currently enacting some different projects and programs that are going to have new data. And so we understand that there's something that we may not be able to measure right now, but it's starting and there will be soon. And so you kind of have to put like little thumbtacks in these areas to know that this is coming, but we can't show a trend. We can't show that data now, but this is what we're going to need going forward. And then that department knowing clear and well that this data point, they are going to need to be able to have on an annual or biannual basis for us. And so a lot of communication, I guess, on that particular one.
I think we're all caught up on questions. So
okay.
If you want to go to your next talking point, that would be
great. All right. So our plan process and how it's different. Before, I think our initial plan was, we have programs, we have things that we're doing. We want to show our success, which of course, right, we all do. That's a big purpose of these plans. But it just didn't really, I don't know that the community was ever really central in this and what the community's vision and ideas for sustainability were. And if there's one thing that we all know is that the grassroots, right? The community joining you in this, as well as your boots on the ground staff and members, that's how really impactful and powerful sustainability things move forward, is when those things align. If you try and have sustainability goals that butts the heads of what your community believes, right, you're not going to ever go anywhere. And then of course it becomes quite a headache. And so we really wanted to change things and change how really plans are done in Peoria. I think besides the general plan, where there is a robust community outreach that is required by, I believe, the state, this is not something that's usually done to the level that we try to do it in any other plan. So we tried to go out to the community in force before we really created the bones of the plan. So we had our 8 topic areas that I had created with our green team members, and we had the description for each of the topics so that we could share that to the community. And then we created a survey, which ASU's students helped us create as well, for the 8 different topics. And it was a longer survey because when you have that 8 different topics, you want to give equal opportunity. So about the equal number of questions for each topic to make sure that you're not skewing, some chapters more than others, so to speak. And so it was a longer survey. And so we know we had to incentivize it as well. So we want people to take that, 5 minutes, 6, 7 minutes, however long it takes to take this 40 question survey. And we want to incentivize it. Like, this is worth your time. Like, we promise, like, this is worth your time. And so we had this great survey that went out. It was all online, of course, because of, again, the time was right in the midst of COVID starting. It was a whole nother can of worms, trying to figure out how to do what I would typically have done town halls, where we have giant white papers, 8 different stations, and you come, you chat with staff that are familiar with those stations, and then we write down your ideas and your thoughts, your concerns, what you like, all on these papers. And then, right, we have that data kind of moving forward. Well, it turned into this online survey that each section had open-ended questions. I wanted to make sure that I provided a place for people to type, because there's always going to be people that want to tell you something and it's not going to be a question you have. And I wanted to make sure that I was giving them an opportunity to have them, whether that's a complaint, whether or not that's something that they want to see, that they could write that out there so that we could capture that. We also had 4 virtual town hall meetings through Zoom. So we had 2 topics per meeting, where we had, again, staff that were experts that were on there, where they could just come and ask us questions and learn a little bit about the process and what goes on within that area. But also they had an open opportunity to give us their input and their ideas for moving forward, what they would like to see, what they believe is important in Peoria. And the town halls were not as well attended as we were hoping. Unfortunately, this was all happening every Wednesday in January, and January was a cluster, a political nightmare. And it seemed like every Wednesday is when something new would hit. And so I think that affected us greatly there. But we got the few that were able to attend, we got some really good conversation and feedback. I think anytime you can open that door to just have conversations with people about certain topics and how a city processes and works, it's always a beautiful thing, because everyone always leaves just like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, this is just really good information for them. How it's like a glimpse behind the curtain of how municipalities work. And so always very helpful. We got some great information from the folks that attended. And then the survey ended up being really, really popular. We did really well with all of our marketing. We got 780 people that were able to respond to our survey, which might not seem like a lot, but for a city trying to get feedback from all its residents, that was a big win. So 780 was great. It was enough to provide some statistic information on the backside of the survey analysis that ASU was able to help us with and use their great survey tool. And so we were able to, all that the plan is now, all the goals, all of the focuses that we have, we've tried to align with the massive amounts of information that we receive from our residents. So that's really the crux here, is that when you can say the reason why we have this goal or why there's this focus is because this was an area that the community really responded to and had concern about. it's a beautiful thing, right? When you can go and say, this is what's important to our community and move that forward. And when you're dealing with potentially troublesome, right, political stuff when it comes to this, when you're starting from the community and this is what they want moving it forward, you're going to not get nearly as much of that interference as you might if you're trying to do from top down or middle up or whoever which way it is. And it's really, you know, I think the best way to move things forward. And so that's what the basis of our plan is from. It's from that community feedback. Unfortunately, it took us a little bit longer. Anytime you're doing a plan like this, as we're all finding out now, just your time frame expands, especially since we had to do everything virtually, and then the time to take all that digital data and morph that into something that we could use, of course, takes some extra time. And so that's the craziness. Now we have a really fantastic contractor that has helped me organize all of this information and tweak our metrics and our tracking into something that's going to be works for Peoria and it's Peoria's data, but also will fit within our kind of state and our national scale, right? We don't want to be way off from what you're seeing in other places, but we also really needed to be specific to Peoria. And so she's able to help us hone this in, as well as working with a designer to make sure that this plan is visual and it's going to have the data and the meat in it, but you're going to be able to look at it and immediately infer some information and some data from it. We have attention spans of a goldfish. As we like to say, I think it's 8 seconds is the average person's attention span. And so what can we convey quicker that also helps us to engage our residents and our management moving forward. This plan, we also plan to update about every 2 to 3 years. And then there's going to be an annual update to our council and to management every year. So not only are we setting this up completely different, but we have it tracked to be, you're going to see this, you're going to see the progress every year. And then we're going to be talking to this, you know, updating the plan itself every couple of years so that this really becomes a living document. We do not want something that just sits on the shelf. We want something that everyone can be proud of and that we can see the progress and check those things off and then come up with the next round for that group. So that's what I have. Any other questions?
Thanks, Victoria.